Everyone, my name is Emily and today we are here at the Friends of Williamson Tunnels to have a look at the tunnels and have a tour as well. And today I am here with...
I'm Tom Stapleton. I'm one of the trustees with the Friends of Williamson's Tunnels, and I also act as a guide and all sorts of other things as well. Today I'm your guide.
So what can we expect from this tour?
Right, well, we're in a small street called Paddington. Not many people would even know it exists. It's the site of one of our two major below ground areas that we look after. We call this our Paddington Cellars through there.
Yes.
And it's an eye-opener. It goes down 60 feet in the ground,
Wow.
down to the bottom of what was basically just a quarry. So we'll be going down through 4 levels once we go through the hatch through there, right down to the bottom of the quarry.
Brilliant. So shall we take a look then?
Yep, let's go in.
And you have to let me know, guys, have you come to visit before and what was your experience like? It's so exciting. I've always heard of this, but I've never actually done it before. So it's something that I'm really looking forward to.
Do you know, it's amazing. We have visitors from all over the world nowadays. We're really popular, but there are still thousands and thousands of people in Liverpool who say, oh, I've heard about the tunnels, but I've never been. I really must go sometime.
I mean, we often, when you live in the city, you tend to not do like all of the touristy things and local, you know, things that we've got going on, because you think, oh, I can do them anytime.
That's right.
But I think it's always worth doing, isn't it?
It certainly is, yeah. Right, so we're going to go down below. When you go down today, because it's a bright sunny day, it's going to look very dull when we first get down onto the gantry down there. But your eyes will get accustomed to it in a minute or two, hopefully. Do watch your footing, because there are lots of steps down there, plenty of places to fall over if you really want to. I'd rather you didn't.
Try my best.
Right.
Might get the views if I do fall.
Some of them upside down.
How long have you been doing these tours?
The tours have been going on for some years now. We first started bringing people down here into these Paddington Cellars in 1999 when we first rediscovered them. This cellar system, which lies below a set of tall 5-storey commercial buildings that Williamson put up, we think about 1836 or so, as far as we can gather. The Williamson buildings were demolished finally in 1939, and from that point on, the cellars down here were buried, lost and forgotten about. Nobody knew they still existed.
Wow.
Until we rediscovered them in 1999. Thanks to some
amazing.
Brilliant research from some really good researchers that we've had working on this over many years. And our research has pinpointed that there should be something very interesting below ground here. And we were watching this site in 1998. We weren't lucky, but we found a way in 1999. In fact, it was the 17th of July, 1999. I wish I'd been here, but I wasn't. I didn't join until about 2009 or 2010, I think. So I've been a volunteer ever since then. And I've been involved from when we first got permission to occupy this site, or we got a lease on the little plot of land on the surface, and we were allowed to start excavating it in 2012.
Yeah.
We had 13 solid years when we were allowed to come in here anytime we wanted, but we weren't allowed to excavate, and it was incredibly frustrating.
Yeah, I imagine
but then,
so.
In June 2012 we got permission, and we started excavating in the November of that year, and we spent 4 solid years excavating this place out, not knowing what we'd come across or how far it stretched or how deep it went. And it was
it feels like there's so much history encapsulated within these tunnels.
Yeah, there really is.
And a lot more than what we would see just on the surface, you know, pun intended.
Yes.
Is there anything that you can tell us specifically about like the Williamson tunnels and how they actually became, you know, a thing? Like, how did they begin?
Yeah, it goes back an awful long way to very shortly after Williamson died. At that time, nobody had any idea what the man had been doing. He'd kept himself to himself, just him and the men who worked for him, excavating these places out and building above ground. And he didn't invite people down here, he didn't boast about it, he didn't talk to people. And so after he died, when they were discovered, or some of them were discovered, it was a big surprise, and nobody could make sense of what he'd been doing. But what he'd actually been doing is digging deep quarries, going straight down in the ground, which is a bit unusual. Rather than nibbling in from the outside of a hillside, he was going straight down in the ground in places like this, where we've got the solid rock there, all the way up to the surface, basically. All this area is built on solid sandstone. And he was just digging this stuff out, selling the stone, building with it himself, giving some away. And the unusual thing is that he chose to vault over his excavations in mostly brick arches, but sometimes sandstone arches, sometimes a mixture of both. And then after doing that, he's been able to build on top. In this particular spot, this was the deepest of his quarries. He went down 60 feet in the ground, and he eventually put up these buildings here, 5 stories high, set of 4 5-story buildings at the top of Paddington. And underneath that, it went down as far below ground as it goes above ground.
That's
really
so
crazy.
Yeah.
There were 2 levels of cellars. We're level with the first cellar with a brick arch roof directly below ground level, which was destroyed in 1939, gone completely. And then we have the second level of cellars, which we excavated out. And then a 3rd level and a 4th level, going down to 60 feet in total. It does seem like a crazy story, but it was just his way. And he was reclaiming the land. So you couldn't say that it was totally crazy, because he was able to build on top of his quarries immediately, rather than walk away and leave a big hole in the ground that would be an eyesore for years and years.
It's quite an interesting way to go about it.
It is.
Shall we take a look at the other levels as well?
Yep. Cool.
Brilliant.
Should we let Ben go past?
But I love that there's also pieces of history on here as well, you know, for people to really see, like, visually from that time. I mean, even this kind of picture, it's so interesting to see that captured.
Yeah.
You know, in that time.
This is a very important part of the story, if there was time to tell it all, and we do give it to the visitors. It's a visit paid by a group in 1925, and it's all down to the Liverpool Daily Post.
Yeah.
That we managed to find this story in the archives, which told us where to be looking. When we wanted, when we wanted to try and find this place, it was that story. A man called Charles Hand, I think it's this one here, was a member of a local history society, and he was very interested in the story of Joseph Williamson. He researched it all over many years, and he joined a local history society, the Historical Society of Lancashire and Cheshire. He was a member of that society, and he wrote a paper which was eventually published in their journal, so that is recorded forever. And it was reading what he wrote and finding the report of this visit in 1925, where they brought the Liverpool Daily Post reporter and cameraman along, which pinpointed this place fairly closely and allowed us to rediscover it in 1999.
Wow.
Yeah, so that's a very important part of otherwise, if it hadn't been for that story, probably we might never have found this, and it would still be buried and lost under the car park.
Wow.
And nobody'd be any the wiser. People who knew about these places years ago, people who lived in the tenement blocks that stood here where the student flats are now, they would have known all about it. Some of them would have been down in here as kids. But people grow up, they move away, they get rehoused, people's memories disappear and they die. So easily to just be forgotten and lost to history. I think it just disappeared into folk memory. Yeah. And nobody knew anything about it. So it's entirely down to us doing the legwork to actually find these places. It's incredible. Yeah. We're quite proud of it, really. It's a big achievement. And emptying it out was a big achievement. Yeah. We took out 159 skipfuls of material in the process of emptying this out.
Wow.
Went down to 60 feet below ground, just emptying out with plastic buckets.
That must have took a
And
long
spades.
time.
4 years exactly it took us to empty this out.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's a lot. Have to have a lot of patience for that. Like,
Yeah.
oh.
Well, I don't know about patience. It was a voyage of discovery because we loved every minute of it because we had no idea what we were going to uncover.
Yeah.
Nearly every chamber in here was full to the roof with the rubble that had been poured down here during the demolition of the Williamson buildings, because if you had these enormous spaces below ground that weren't being used for anything, the easiest way was to dump it all below rather than pay somebody to take it away, which is what they did. So when we rediscovered it, there was very little areas that were accessible that you could actually move around in, and everything else was full to the roof. So after that long wait and 4 years of digging, we finally unearthed a lot, but it was so exciting emptying it out chamber by chamber and finding out what was there. Unfortunately, no tunnels leading off in any direction that we ever discovered, but it's still a very interesting deep excavation, and most people come out of here after visiting thinking, wow, never expected anything like that. Right next to the street. Wow. That's the usual reaction.
So shall we take a look downstairs then?
Yeah.
Brilliant.
Excuse me. Watch your footing down here.
It's a lot cooler down here than it is up at the top today.
Yes, it's a fact really that the temperature is pretty much the same all year round down here.
Yeah.
I'm usually the one who opens up on a Wednesday morning and a Sunday morning on my way in and do a dynamic risk assessment to make sure everything's as it should be and safe. And when you open up on a really cold morning in February, and I open those hatches, the warm, wet air hits you in the face. It really is very warm. But then when you come down here on a hot summer's day, it feels lovely and cool. But it's actually the same temperature all year round. So that's what it is.
So what can you tell us about this section of the tunnels?
Well, this little chamber, this is the first one just below ground level. We were standing just above there a few minutes ago. And this one, I think, was probably a coal store in Williamson's day when the buildings were built.
Okay, yeah.
The building line of the Williamson buildings was above the solid rock there. And this, I think, would have been about the width of the pavement in Paddington, which was a wider street in those days. And we had that rather nice coal hole.
That's interesting.
Yeah, and I believe there would have been a hatch in the pavement, and the coalman would have come down the street and dropped the bags of coal down here. That's my understanding. Yeah. And the rest of the chamber, I think, would have been right under the street. Williamson didn't care. He would build wherever he wanted. Nobody in those days was going to tell him what he could and couldn't do. And he did build tunnels underneath the streets without telling anybody. So we know he was like that. Don't think there were any planning laws in those days. People later on were a bit worried.
It's quite a project to take on, isn't it, to just build tunnels under the city?
He's that sort of a man. Yeah. We do believe that this chamber goes further and joins up with other things, but when we were excavating, there was a collapse in the roof over there, and we had to stop very quickly. But then we realised we'd overstepped the mark anyway, and we can't go in that direction, so we had to stop. But we do believe it goes further. We built that wall there deliberately because it was the end of what we could do in that direction. But if there's anything from this cellar system that connects to anything else of the Williamson tunnel system, it'll be in that direction because there isn't anything lower down. We did have a little poke around in the corner there, but there's only a limit to how far we can go there before we're under the car park, which isn't good. So we call this level 1, and next is level 2, which is a proper working cellar under a commercial building, nothing particularly special. And it's the second one of 2 working cellars, one above the other. Which I believe was not too uncommon in those days. You don't see it now, but 2 levels of working cellars. You might find in some of the big premises down in the middle of town, possibly warehouses, I don't know. I haven't seen any myself, but I'm told that they do.
Yeah.
They do have 2 levels. So we could have a look at level 2.
So let us know in the comments, guys. Have you come to visit the Friends of Williamson tunnels? And if so, what was it like when you came?
This is the entrance to level 2.
Oh, well, this is interesting.
Yes, people usually find this interesting, more so for the displays of artifacts that we've discovered.
Definitely, yeah. So have all of these been found here?
There are no more than a couple of items here that don't belong. But basically everything in here that's on display was found by us.
Wow.
In here.
That's incredible.
Yeah, not necessarily all found on this level.
Yeah.
A lot of stuff was found in the chamber we just come from, and much more was found down below as well.
Oh, that is so interesting.
But pretty much all found in here. And it was wonderful just digging away and things like this just appearing out of
It's so interesting to see, like, these pieces of history.
Yeah, yeah. There's a history lesson just in glass bottles.
Absolutely.
Which I don't know very much about, but it is quite a complex story. Some people could pick up a bottle and tell you exactly when it was made and what the process was, what period of time they were making them.
And these are quite interesting, these like documents and images as well.
Yeah, these are here because 3 of the 4 Williamson buildings on this site, they became number 120, 122, 124 and 126 Paddington at the top of the street. Number 126, which stood above there, was a baker's shop for many years, from the 1840s right up until about 1900. But the other 3, at some point in time, were all occupied by a rather enterprising grocer by the name of William Boot. That's why this man is here. And he was up to all sorts, as well as being a grocer. He was blending teas, roasting coffees, bottling lemonade, bottling ale and porter, and wines as well, and all sorts of things. He was making the paper bags that tea and coffees went into, even printing the labels that went on the bags, because everything was sold in brown paper bags, of course, in those days. So he was doing the whole lot from this building. So a lot of the beer bottles, half imperial pint beer bottles and lemonade bottles are here because it was his business. It was something he was doing within these buildings for many years. And the damaged and broken bottles were thrown through a hole into the space below us, and we cleared tons and tons of this broken green bottle glass from down there.
Wow.
So, yes, real history lesson in everything that was
It just feels like these tunnels are a time capsule for that time period.
Yes.
Like everything's been
yes, a
saved,
time capsule.
preserved.
That's a good way of putting it. We tell people really that there's nothing, in our opinion, there's nothing really valuable in this lot at all, but it is a history lesson.
Yes,
that stretches from, say, mid-Victorian times right up until 1939, when the buildings were finally collapsed and all this stuff disappeared in here.
Yeah.
It was. It went on for so many years, but it is just a history lesson.
Definitely.
We rather like. We broke in here in 1999 through a hole that was created here in this arch. I should have explained earlier, but that was where a digger digging in a hole here.
Oh, that is so interesting.
Scraped through the side of this brick arch and created a small hole. And our people, before my time, they dropped a ladder down here, and they came in for the first time, tied a rope round the waist, grabbed a hard hat and a torch, and into the unknown.
That must have been quite the experience.
And only slim people need apply, because by the time
Yes.
you got a ladder through there isn't much room for anything else. So that was what it was like when they first came in.
Am I in your way if I come in and check the first aid kit?
No, it's something that has to be done. Yeah.
And there's so many different pieces as well. I'm noticing quite a few pieces of china.
There's an awful lot of china, and
Yeah.
it still amazes me to this day how so much stuff was found by us either completely intact or
Yeah.
almost intact. Because when you look at it and think that, you know, this place was full of lumps of rock and bricks and slates and broken
Yeah.
fireplaces and all the rest, how did some of this stuff survive being tipped down here without breaking?
It's amazing. Yeah, you would think it
We
would
did
instantly
find
smash.
tons more that was all in fragments and not savable,
Yeah.
but we've obviously displayed the best of what we've got.
Of course,
And
yeah.
we have more in storage still, which we can bring out and swap over occasionally. But the two chambers on this level 2 have become the main display area because it was convenient, and people do like to see it. But we've got a lot more stuff that we could bring out and swap over when we get round to it.
This, I've noticed, that is adorable.
Yes,
These tiny little cups.
people love those doll's house furniture.
I'm not a big fan of these. A little bit, you know, seems like a bit of nightmarish.
They're spooky, aren't they? Yeah.
A little bit creepy.
But once they've got hair on and they're dressed and part of a complete doll, they will look completely different. But yes, they do have a spooky look about them. Thousands and thousands of broken clay pipes. Why we found so much of this doll's house furniture, I just couldn't explain. It wasn't all found together, of course. It was
Yeah.
spread around all over the place, and we pulled all the different little bits
It's
together.
incredible though, the finds, you know, that are around here, like, and to try and piece it together and figure out why is that here, you know.
Yes, yeah.
Seems like there's a story with every piece.
We just don't know, but I have a theory, I have an impression that maybe a lot of people in this area who were living in terrible slum housing in the 1930s,
Yeah.
and it was all being cleared and people were being rehoused elsewhere. I think a lot of these people may have had to get out with the minimum possessions because they'd had no way of transport. Can you imagine just having to borrow a hand cart for the day to shift as much as you could of you know, everything that was in your home, and having to make decisions about leaving things behind because you couldn't take it all.
That
Maybe
would
they were
make
being moved a
sense.
mile or two away, and a lot of the stuff ending up being bulldozed down below ground along with the bricks and rubble.
Yeah.
Could be a completely wrong theory, but
No,
you know,
that does actually, that would make a lot
it
of sense.
appeals to me because I
Yeah.
can't think of a better one. So that may be how
Yes.
some of it came about, because I can't find a good explanation
No,
otherwise.
I mean, just the sheer amount of items that have been found here
Yeah.
is astonishing, really, and especially that a lot of them have survived and are quite well preserved.
Yes, very
That's
well
amazing.
preserved. And it's historically interesting, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, I'm a big history buff myself, so this kind of stuff, I'm like amazed.
Well, we find that most of our visitors are really impressed by the structures.
Yes, yeah,
Excuse me, frog in my throat. But they're also impressed when they come down here with all the things that we found. And there are things that appeal to everybody, really. You know, the older people will always remember some of the things from their younger days, you know, and the kids are interested to be told about things from earlier days. You show the young kids a potty goes under the bed and tell them what that was about, and they can't believe it. You know. And say, you at your age, you would have been the one that would have had the job of emptying the potty in the morning. The whole family had been using in the middle of the night.
Oh, God.
Yeah. And then even things like a bottle like that,
Wow.
blue and green bottles with the ribs on,
Yeah,
displaying to
and
the
they're quite
kids that-
beautiful as well, like the colours.
They are,
you
yeah,
know.
but in the days when a lot of people had poisons in their homes and didn't
yes.
have electric light, if you switched, if you got up in the night, you didn't want to grab the wrong bottle and take some medicine.
so
If you could feel the ribs,
You could feel,
you knew that was not
Oh, that's
something you would drink
interesting.
out of. Yeah, little things like that.
Yeah,
We must have found hundreds and hundreds of these little inkwells.
Wow.
Every kid would have had one of those sitting in a little recess on their wooden desk in school. And the ink monitor would have gone round every morning with a slightly bigger bottle, I suppose, refilling the inkwells at the beginning of the day.
yeah.
For my time.
Oh, wow, and these look amazing. Wow, they're different patterns.
Yes.
And they look so fragile as well, yet
Japanese
so well
look,
preserved.
isn't it? But it's fine bone china. Wow. It probably isn't Japanese. I don't know. But there was a fad for producing stuff like this that was based on
It's
Japanese and
gorgeous.
Chinese designs. Lovely, isn't it? Yeah. And you know, quite honestly, if something like that turns up out of the rubble and the spout's missing, it's not the end of the world, is it?
No,
The spout,
I mean,
the spout's inside there. But it's still such an interesting thing to display and well worthwhile displaying, even though it's damaged. And that's how most things are. A lot of things have been broken in several pieces and glued together occasionally. But it's all worth displaying as long as it's nearly complete.
To see how they've managed to be preserved in this kind of environment. It's amazing.
And the chamber below us, excuse me, I have got a frog. The chamber below us here is 12 metres high. It's the size of a church nave. It's the biggest one, with a brick arch roof. We're standing on another brick arch here with the stone slabs over it. Yeah. And below that, this space, 12 metres high, was filled entirely with this stuff here. Wow. Sort of a low-grade coke waste. And it's very light and soft. And lots of artefacts in there were cushioned by it, so that probably helped them not to be broken when they were tipped down here. Wow. Whereas on this level, it was all bricks and rubble. Yeah. Which is much more likely to break. That's so interesting that it would have acted like a cushion. Yeah, I think it did. How it came to be in there with all that stuff is another story. We don't know, but it was, and it all went down. It's poured down through a drop hole up there in that chamber, and this is the second level of cellars. So there was another cellar above this, similar, with a drop hole in its roof, or probably a hatch in the pavement, and then straight down below there, through that drop hole, 12 metres down, and it filled this space absolutely to the roof before it was abandoned and they couldn't get any more in. Well, I hope you guys have enjoyed this little sneak peek of the inside of the Friends of Williamson tunnels. It's been really interesting to see all the different things that have been preserved in history and how it acts as like a time capsule. Really interesting. So I hope you guys come and visit and have a little look. You know, it's definitely one to check out. Whether you're from Liverpool yourself or if you're just visiting, really interesting and definitely one for the history buffs. So thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed it.